Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Daily Upkeep. Today we are going to the sewers of New York City to explore Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Limited. Pre-release sealed events, pick 2 draft, or just jamming on Arena? However you plan on playing this format, we've got you covered with a complete breakdown of what to expect from TMNT. First thing to note about TMNT is that it is a small set, just like Marvel's Spider-Man. However, it was actually originally designed to be a small set, so it should feel a little bit more cohesive to play. Ninja Turtles is centered around 3 main themes. The first is artifacts, which are all over this set. There are mutagen tokens, artifact sack outlets, a bunch of robots, and a couple affinity cards as well. And food. Tons and tons of food. Second is ninjas, which, duh, the Ninja Turtles set has to have a bunch of ninjas. There's a lot of ninja synergy built into this set, and plenty of ninja creatures since most of the turtles have the ninja creature type. In fact, every play booster has a guaranteed turtle slot where the legendary turtles show up. There's even a new ninjutsu-like mechanic called Sneak, which we'll get back to in a moment. And finally, 1/1 counters are going to be a big deal here. I guess that's the mutant part of the set, but there are tons of ways to put counters on your creatures, which include the new mutagen tokens. Before we break this format wide open, go ahead and subscribe to the Daily Upkeep for more top-tier limited strategy just like this. So, 1/1 counters, artifacts, and ninjas are the name of the game in this set. But what about the new and returning mechanics? Let's dive in. I've mentioned them twice already, but mutagens just play a really big role here. They put 1/1 counters on things, they're artifacts, and they play very well into the new mechanic, Disappear. Cards with Disappear have an ability that triggers on your end step if a permanent left your side of the battlefield that turn. If this sounds familiar, that's because it's a lot like the Void mechanic we saw in Edge of Eternities, and similar to other mechanics like Revolt and Morbid. The big difference here is that Disappear abilities can only happen on your end step, and they only track stuff leaving your side of the board. That could be a fetch land like Escape Tunnel, a mutagen token you sacrificed earlier that turn, or even a creature you return to your hand to sneak something in. It's not a huge part of the set, but it adds a nice little bit of flavor. Speaking of sneak, let's talk about the new ninjutsu-esque mechanic of the set. Some spells in TMNT have an alternate sneak cost. In order to use the sneak cost, you have to return an unblocked attacking creature to your hand, which means you can only sneak something during the declare blockers step. There are a couple differences from ninjutsu though. For sneak spells, you actually cast the card, so they'll use the stack and can be copied, countered, and so on. Second, sneak can appear on any card type. Ninjutsu was only used on creatures, but you'll see sneak on instants and sorceries as well. If you sneak a creature into play, it'll come in tapped and attacking. That's not written out on all the cards, but it works just like ninjutsu in this regard. Also, definitely keep in mind that sneak gets around timing restrictions. It doesn't matter if it's an instant, sorcery, or creature. If you meet the requirements to sneak something out, you can do it at instant speed. If you've got good sneak cards in your card pool, try to pair them with evasive creatures like small flyers and death touchers. Or at least get a few good enter the battlefield effects in your deck so you can pick those creatures up and reuse them later on. Class is back in session for the 3rd time now, though there are only 5 class enchantments in this set, 1 rare for each color. Each class has a level 1 ability that's active as soon as it enters. To level up your classes, you'll have to pay the mana costs indicated on the right side of the card. Leveling up a class adds new abilities to the ones they already have. Unlike sagas, classes don't actually use counters of any kind, so you can't proliferate them or move them around or do any shenanigans like that. The Alliance mechanic from Streets of New Capenna returns, and it's actually pretty simple to understand. A card with Alliance triggers when another creature enters the battlefield, and that's about it. We call this creature fall sometimes, sort of like landfall, and it's a straightforward way of rewarding you for putting bodies on board. If you find yourself opening a bunch of Alliance cards, try using spells that put a bunch of bodies onto the board at once. Just a quick little pro tip, sneaking a creature into play mid-combat is a great way to trigger your Alliance abilities at instant speed. Food is also a pretty big deal in this set, as you could probably tell by all of the pizza in the card art. There are cards that make food tokens, but also cards that have the food subtype themselves, and payoffs like Courier of Comestibles and Ragamuffin Raptor that interact with them. Food is the black-green archetype in this set, but it should be valuable to most of the other main color pairs too. And lastly, Hybrid Mana is back in full force as well. This is something they've been doing in limited sets a lot lately. Hybrid cards have flexible mana costs, which makes them easier to slot into different types of decks. Since TMNT is a smaller set, it has fewer archetypes than your average limited environment. Here are the main decks that you can expect to play in this format. Red-White is all about alliance and putting as many bodies as you can in play. It's a pretty typical Boros strategy that looks to swarm the board and overwhelm the opponent with sheer numbers. Some of your low rarity payoffs like Wingnut and Raphael Tough Turtle make it pretty obvious how this deck should play out. The Neutrinos is one of your Boros signpost uncommons. It blinks a creature when it attacks, then returns it tapped and attacking, so it not only triggers its own alliance ability, but also gives a sort of haste-like ability to another creature that entered that turn. Black-White is really pushing the ninja theme, and it has some of the best supported sneak cards in the format. The headlining uncommon is Karai, Future of the Foot. This is a great value card that straight up reanimates something if you sneak it in and hit your opponent. Nice, Karai brought her technique with her too. Honestly, if you just have to cast this straight up to give something -3/-3 and pump one of your creatures +3/+3, that's pretty good. Blue-red artifacts is another super obvious archetype, and it looks pretty similar to how it did in Edge of Eternities. Stuff your deck full of artifact creatures and fill in the gaps with cards that create mutagen tokens. Your first signpost uncommon for blue-red is Baxter Stockman. He looks a little wimpy as a 5-mana 3/3, but it brings along a little 1/1 artifact buddy and gives any artifact creature +3/+0, first strike, and vigilance each turn. It can push a lot of damage, but I'm still wary of the sizing here, since Baxter will die to common removal spells like Manhole Missile and Tenderize. Next up, we've got Brilliance Unleashed, and it is freaking sweet. It destroys something the opponent controls and reanimates one of your own artifacts. It even makes it a creature if it wasn't one already. If you've ever played with Back for More, this should look a little familiar, and it's super splashable in other decks with tons of artifact cards. Blue-green is a 1/1 counter deck that really leans on mutagens to make sure that you have the biggest creatures in play. It combines large green creatures with some of the artifact payoffs from blue to just beat down and try to outsize the opponent. Genghis Frog is one of your key uncommons here, and it's already a rock-solid 2-drop on its own, but you can pump out even more mutagens if you combine it with other mutant creatures. It's also a trampler that makes its own mutagen to start with, so not a bad place to dump some 1/1 counters. You also get Lessons from Life, which is your typical Simic draw spell / ramp spell, but drawing 3 cards for 4 mana is still pretty good and limited. This one seems like it'll be easy to splash around in other color pairs too. Black-green is all about food, which makes it the most delicious archetype in the entire set. WotC officially calls the black-green archetype Disappear, but we just feel like food fits better. The first signpost uncommon for this deck is Pizza Face Gastromancer. Look, ridiculous name, but you're getting a 2/4, a food token, and a disappear ability that can turn an artifact into a 3/3 every turn, or just put 3 1/1 counters on a creature you control. Tainted Treats is your other Golgari uncommon, and this one's a lot easier to understand. Kill a threat for 3 mana and get a food if you hit something small. I could totally see splashing this in a deck that's light on hard removal spells. You're gonna see a couple of 2-color rares that don't really fit into the main archetypes, so be careful with these. For example, Krang and Shredder is a blue-black bomb, but there really isn't an intended blue-black deck in the format. You should still play it if you can, just don't try to build an entire deck around it and get stuck in an unsupported color pair. Instead, put it in white-black ninjas or any of the blue archetypes and just treat it like a single-colored card for your deck. We've picked out the best commons and uncommons for this set by color, but I'll also shout out a couple of noteworthy hybrid cards as well. Leonardo Big Brother has the cheapest sneak cost you can get in this set, and sometimes it'll come crashing in as a 4/3 or 5/3 or even bigger. It's sort of cheating to put these legendary turtles on the list since they occupy a specific slot in play boosters, but we'll allow it. Removal spells usually make it pretty high up the list, and Uneasy Alliance makes sense as one of White's best commons. It's the pacifism variant of the set, which is usually good, and this exact card was great in Avatar Limited as Path to Redemption. Mighty Mutanimals really sticks out as a great enabler and payoff for Alliance and just an overall strong rate for a 4-drop. It even triggers itself when the token enters, so you're getting 5 power and 4 toughness to start with, and it grows your board even more as additional creatures enter. We'll keep it simple with Dimensional Exile as the second best uncommon. It's basically just ossification without the Planeswalker text, and that's already one of White's best removal spells in the game. Seriously, this could have been 4 or 5 other cards. White's uncommons are stacked. In an absolutely stunning turn of events, blue is not as good as white in this set. Sewer Valence Cam sticks out as a cheap enabler for sneak decks and artifact decks, and it's a good little bit of value in the long run. It wouldn't be too surprising if Blue's best commons end up actually being one of the interaction pieces instead, like Return to the Sewers or Ooze Spill. This might be a bit of a hot take, but Suit Up was so good in Neon Dynasty, and that leads me to believe that Mind Transfer Protocol will be really good here. It's expensive for a combat trick, but people are incentivized to block your creatures with all these sneak spells floating around. Donatello's technique has some sick upside. Worst case scenario, it's just divination, and best case, you're drawing 2 cards and returning something with a good trigger to your hand. Sometimes it'll feel like drawing 3 cards for 1 mana, and that feels so good. Metalhead looks like a safe bet for a premium blue uncommon. Don't get too caught up on the red activation. This is still just great if you play it with no way to use the ability. It's a lot like Spikeshell Harrier from Ether Drift with a more relevant upside if you've got red mana in your deck. In black, you can sign me up for Anchovy and Banana Pizza. The fact that food and artifacts are themes in this set leads me to believe you'll get more out of this than just a kill spell. Look for ways to pick it up, recur it from the graveyard, and so on. And the second black common is actually a toss-up between a number of different cards. I'm gonna put my foot down on Foot Mystic as a great value creature. Gives you a great piece of sack fodder, it attacks and blocks well, and it wears 1/1 counters from mutagens quite well. Splinter Hamato Yoshi is simple, but sweet. A Lord at just 2 mana is pretty strong if you get enough ninjas, and that's without factoring in the sneak ability, which can mess up combat for your opponent real bad if they're not expecting it. Again, maybe hot take territory, but Dream Beavers looks like everything these black decks want to do. Whoa, Dream Beavers. It's not a ninja itself, but it's great at setting up sneak attacks, and the chip damage and scry is fine already. Manhole Missile is a functional reprint of removal spells like Fire Prophecy and Volcanic Spite, and the cheap red burn spell usually plays pretty well. Getting to filter a card away is some nice flood insurance too. Red honestly doesn't have too many other standout commons, but I'll give Mouser Foundry a shout out. When all is said and done, you're getting 2 1/1 artifact tokens and 3 damage to a creature, and it gets really good if you have ways to sacrifice it, rebuy it, and so on. Look y'all, Flame Tongue Kavu is still a hell of a card. General Trog, Heart of Stone, isn't as good as that, but it'll turn the game around if you've got a spare artifact to sacrifice. Guac and Marshmallow Pizza, yeah, I guess I would try it once. These food cards are all way better than they look. The +2/+2 green combat trick is usually playable in most formats, and this leaves a relevant permanent behind for some life gain, recursion, or food synergies. Green doesn't really get much removal at common, which makes Tenderize a really important card for decks that need interaction. Bite effects like these, which we've seen 1,000 times before, are usually pretty good and limited. Courier of Comestibles looks awesome, but you'll need to build around it just a little bit. You want a couple of the pizza cards to search up, especially the black and red removal spells, but once you've got a few in your deck, this becomes a great toolbox card for different situations. It can also fetch up Pizza Face, if you're so inclined. West Wind Avatar is one of the most expensive cards in the set, but it's a great top-end engine card. It's huge, it gains life, and it draws cards. We'll see if this format's slow enough to get to 7 mana, but can't ask for too much more from your top end in green. Alright, that's it for best monocolor cards, but let's take a look at the best hybrid mana cards while we're here. Mechanized Ninja Cavalry is deceptively strong. It's 2 artifacts for blue-red decks. It's a decent creature to sneak back to your hand in white-black, and it keeps you pretty flexible in a draft. Slithering Cryptic is a decent filler creature for any of the blue or green decks. If you need a 3-drop, you can always do worse than a 2/3 that makes a mutagen. Bonus points if you have artifact synergies, which means this will play well in blue-red artifact decks too. Before we let you go, let's go over some quick tips and tricks that'll help you cowabunga into your first event. One of the most important things in this format is managing your artifacts. If you have payoffs in your deck for controlling artifacts, you might want to hold off on using them until you draw those cards. For example, you'll really wish you still had that mutagen in play when you draw your General Trog, Heart of Stone. We've seen ninjutsu plenty of times now, and sets with ninjutsu actually make blocking kinda tricky. Sneak shouldn't be any different, so you should always think twice before declaring no blocks on an opponent's creature. If they're making a suspicious attack, ask yourself what's more likely. Do they have a combat trick, or are they trying to trick you and sneak something big into play? Honestly, the cards in this set look like an absolute blast to play. Sure, they may be covered in goopy cheese and are like greasy and stuff, but the limited environment looks very well designed. What do you guys think of TMNT? Let us know in the comments what your favorite card from the set is down below.